Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Unit Lost. I am Josh. Now then, today we're going to be doing some Pro Overanalyze. We're going to be doing it specifically on two topics. First and foremost is going to be Blizzard World, the new map in Stage 3. It's been introduced recently. Teams have been playing on it for a little while. We've had a chance to see a couple of different teams actually play it on this map now and see sort of how they're setting up, how they're playing it, what team comps are being used, that kind of thing. So we're going to use this match between Houston Outlaws and London Spitfire to actually go over this one. I also want to take this chance to talk about Houston Outlaws and London Spitfire, an emerging rivalry in my mind in the Overwatch League. In the regular season, Houston Outlaws have always beaten London Spitfire. In Stage 1, it was a 3-1 to Houston Outlaws. In Stage 2, it was a 3-2. And now, in Stage 3, well, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the series, go watch it now. If you're still here and you haven't seen it and you get angry about spoilers, don't blame me, because it was a 3-2 to Houston Outlaws again. Now then, there could be a number of factors going into this, but it's very important to sort of understand that London Spitfire seem to struggle against Houston Outlaws. Like, this is a really interesting thing because Houston Outlaws do actually have a very unique playstyle. Now then, they're also, I think, coming into Stage 3, one of the hungrier teams as well. They sort of used that break, the 2 weeks between stages to go on a little bit of a tour. They toured Texas, I think, saw a bunch of fans, tons of them went to meet and greets and stuff, and so they had a chance to sort of re-energize and get good to go. London Spitfire, meanwhile, sort of recharged their batteries a little bit, went back to Korea for a week, and then came back and, they're trying to just get back into the rhythm of things. Now then, the biggest thing we want to talk about at the moment, though, is Blizzard World. So as the gates open, I'm of course going to pause it, and we're going to talk a little about these team comps. So then, first things first, I want to highlight this on the defense, the use of McCree. The reason why we're seeing McCree here is actually, I believe, because Houston Outlaws, or at least London Spitfire, suspect that Houston Outlaws are going to run a Sombra. We've seen a lot of Sombra used defensively here on the first point of Blizzard World. Of course, she's a huge factor here in Stage 3. I'm sure we'll talk about her in a specific video on her later on. But at the moment, just sort of take my word for it, the Sombra seems to be the favored hero at the moment for the start of Blizzard World. The McCree shuts down Sombra pretty well, right? It helps you with the Sombra, it helps you with the Tracer as well, so McCree's sort of very good at handling that, so that's why they're seeing the McCree. Instead, Houston Outlaws are playing a different style. Houston have gone for Lynxer on the Widowmaker, who's arguably the best Widowmaker in the league at the moment, so I don't blame them at all, and the entire team is going to play in support of Lynxer. This is going to make it very difficult, especially with that McCree, because his mobility is less, because you don't have that Genji as well, who can actually sort of act as a defensive player against Widowmaker by just putting a deflect up in front of people. It makes the Widowmaker very hesitant to sort of fire bullets. It means that basically London are going to have to play this very slowly and carefully. So out of Houston, we're expecting to see this playstyle that's going to revolve around Lynxer primarily, and I actually really like this out of Houston. I've always held the belief that Lynxer is probably the strongest player on that team, and especially if Jake is on Tracer, it's not his best hero. Definitely play around Lynxer, that's going to put them in a really strong position. This means that London, for example, can't take that main route. They can't go through the pseudo valley of heroes at the front, and instead have to go through the Lost Vikings and Found, and now you can see that they're going to, they know that Widowmaker's on the field now, so they know that they can't just like sort of run up on the enemy team, and you're going to see them sort of bounce around. It's like they're going on a tour, right? They're just enjoying the theme park, ladies and gents, as they try and get to this high ground now through the flight to Duskwood, and they're just trying to sort of navigate their way through it to get to the point. While Houston Outlaws, Widowmaker's just positioned in the distance, and this is where Widowmaker is strong, ladies and gents. When Lynxer knows where the enemy team is coming from, when Widowmaker sort of can see that, oh, they're going to have to come through this choke point, and they can just cover the choke point, you can see that he got, Infrasight way ahead of everyone else getting ults, right? He can just set up easily, fire off a couple of pot shots, maybe get a kill or two, and then shut down the enemy team. The other thing that Jake is doing at the moment, which I actually think is really, really important on this map, is he's trying to shut down Prophet here on this dock on the back line. I think this is actually a very important factor in how Blizzard World plays, and Traces on this dock is going to be very important. Like, we'll talk about that more on the defense for London Spitfire, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind, right? That getting a Tracer in this position back here is actually really, really useful. London Spitfire, they've gone all the way around the houses. They're going to try and force something from here, but again, they don't control the dock on the back line. Tracer gets in, puts a ton of damage on Birdring, and it's easy as you like for Raucous to get the finishing blow. So all this positioning, all this time, ends up really not amounting to anything because they start losing players pretty quickly. Houston Outlaws can still set stuff up. Lynx is just bouncing around all over the place using that grapple, positioning on those long sight lines on this first point here and getting kills. Anytime Lynx has an opportunity, he's going to get kills. And meanwhile, Mooma and Coolmat are going to play and defend him. And this is actually a big factor, I think, in why Houston Outlaws seem to sort of get under the skin of London Spitfire somewhat. They actually seem to like have solved Spitfire, because Spitfire's playstyle, in my mind, is very, very punishment oriented. Right, they're the dominatrixes of the league, so to speak. Right, they go in and they punish mistakes. So if a tank is out of position, London Spitfire don't care; they'll kill the tank. But Muma and Coolmat play very much around their DPS players, especially Jake on the Junkrat or Linksa on that Widowmaker. And Junkrat and Widowmaker, they like to sit back. You know, they take the time, they put the feet up and spam bullets down range, and then get a couple of kills. So if Coolmat and Muma aren't actually getting out of position to get killed, then London Spitfire can't do that. They have to be the initiators, they have to be super aggressive, and now you can see that they have changed things up. Birdring has had to swap to the Genji because they realize that, okay, they're playing around that Widowmaker, and the McCree's not really being useful here, right? They can't use this McCree. Coolmat and Muma aren't going to jump in stupidly and get themselves killed. Jake isn't getting himself caught out as well. He's playing very defensively in the backline, and Lynx is just putting bullets in and getting these kills. Now then, a good early dive does actually come out of London Spitfire, gets a lot of pressure on the backline, forced out of Transcendence early, and you just caught a glimpse of it there, but Gesture actually activated Primal Rage and just shoved Linksa, I believe, into the lake. I don't think he just killed him, I think he just dunked him into the lake, into the middle. Once Linksa drops, this team comp from Houston is a lot weaker. Right, they have to rely on Jake to get a lot of their damage out there, and especially if Coolmat gets DMAC, they just don't have damage output anymore. Jake is a passable tracer, but he's not a great tracer. He's not going to win sort of, you know, the 5 versus 1. He's not going to win in those clutch or kick situations, so he's not to be relied upon in those situations. He's very much there in this point to facilitate Linksa, to facilitate that Widowmaker's play. Very, very nicely done by London Spitfire, actually winning from a ultimate deficit there, so they actually had less ultimates than the enemy and managed to win that fight. That sets them up very nicely for this second point. So let's talk about second point, because second point really fascinates me, because on paper you think that this is a really good point for Widowmaker, and I'm curious to see actually how the Widowmaker play pans out in the long term. Widowmaker is at her best, like I said, when you know where the enemy team is coming from. Sure, long sightlines exist on this second point, but because it's so circular, it's actually very hard for that Widowmaker to get clean sightlines on targets, to know where targets are coming from. It's very easy for a Tracer or a Genji, or even like tanks as well, to get around the side, to get a jump on that Widowmaker. And the way I generally measure it out in my mind is how many Winston jumps does it take to get to a target. And even if Widowmaker positions on the far back, there's usually a pathway that, you know, a Winston could take to find an angle to get a single jump onto that Widowmaker, and that's usually a sign that Widowmaker might not quite be as strong as you would expect here. That being said, Lynx is good enough to make it work. I think teams are also still a bit inexperienced on this. Some teams took a break over that 2-week period where they weren't playing between the stages. Some teams didn't, so, you know, it's just seeing how this goes. Birdring goes in here with a very greedy ultimate here, does manage to get Raucus's ult as well, and like this feels very scattered to me. Like, this feels almost sloppy, I dare say, as Badosin uses his own Transcendence. Like, the fighting's sort of broken down all over the place into these little areas. In general, I would favor Spitfire in these engagements, as Birdring now brings out a Widowmaker of its own, and it also means that the payload is still rolling forward. But yeah, Badosin had to like use a very early trance. I think he actually died very early in a fight earlier on without using that ultimate. So he just sort of went down, died, and didn't actually manage to get the trance off. He just collapsed. He just crumbled in a time when he could have saved the team. Again, just like little small errors, leaving them at a deficit at the moment. And that's making life very difficult for these guys. Like, it's just making things way more complicated than it needs to be, because London just don't seem like a cohesive, singular unit here. Like, they're just getting picked off, they're getting staggered out, and now with 50 seconds left on the clock, it just feels like, you know, where's all the time gone? Where did that all go? Well, they got stalled out a little bit on first, but on second as well, we had this big long scrap. Sure, they got around the corner, but they got to this location here. And this is where I really want to talk about Blizzard World, because this, in my mind, is like the weakness of this map, right? This point here is so vulnerable from the spawn from second. You have such an easy sightline as you come out of that spawn door to see what's happening on the point that you can just get involved straight away. That's usually the sort of layout that you see on third points of maps, right? Like Numbani third point. When you leave the spawn, you can see instantaneously what's happening on the point, and you can start fighting on it. But here on second, you pretty much get an instant view on the point, and as long as you have tanks and healers sort of keeping people up on the point, you can actually start having an impact on that fight on the point very, very quickly. So, yeah, this is the moment I was talking about, actually. Badosin died here with a Transcendence in this crucial final fight. Like, Badosin just died. There wasn't anything special there. There's nothing that's going to keep him alive either. Sound barrier had already gone, and Badosin just got rushed down by Coolmat, and he died. And that's such a huge error that cost them so much here. Again, it just feels a little bit sloppy. Badosin actually, you know, he's going to do some phenomenal plays here. He's a good player, but that mistake is just huge. And these ultimates out of him so far on Blizzard World just seemed really sloppy. Like, it's just not as refined as usual. Again, I'm going to attribute this to the fact that they had that 2-week break, that they, might have spent a week away from training, from scrimming, from practice, so they're not quite as sharp and refined as they used to be. But honestly, it's not a good excuse, right? You expect better, perhaps, out of London Spitfire. Okay, ladies and gents, welcome to the second half. I'm also going to say apologies, I have a bit of a cough, so if I pause for some reason, that's why. Alright then, so London Spitfire on the defense. This is pretty much what I expect to become standard on this map. I think the teams are actually settled in on what they're going to run already, and because we have this nice overhead view, I'm going to use it a little bit liberally. On ladder, what you'll generally see is people will defend in this location here, right? You'll usually see like people try and set up here, and they'll get like an Orisa, for example, set up here, soldier on the high ground, shooting down and controlling this opening here, or controlling the doorway, which is just tucked under here. This gives you very good control, but generally in pro level play, we do see on hybrid maps, teams opting for a much more defensive posturing, all the way back here, for example. Now, because they have the Sombra Tracer, that's actually much more of a dive-style comp. So I expect to see them try and get something done, as the enemy team moves into this area. Fury's just here for scouting, by the way. He just wants to see what the enemy team's up to. But I really expect to see, harassment happening here. Zenyatta is trying to put orbs all the way down and through, using this high ground and trying to just get a quick cheeky pick, and if they can do that, then that's great. Winston also starting from here is a great position because he's actually available to jump pretty much wherever he needs to go if he needs to go somewhere quickly. He can also just hop down and jump over here, for example, which is nice for him because it means he has access to pretty much the entire first point. Meanwhile, out of the Houston Outlaws, we do see that, the McCree and the Moira coming out as well. The Moira just a lot less vulnerable to Sombra than the Zenyatta. She is not going to just die and, fold to EMPs, for example. So you see Fury rockets up into the sky, looks down and calls out to his team, okay, they're running this, 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 and this. And so they know that the McCree is coming. They know that they're going to have to play around that idea that, McCree could do a lot of damage to Prophet. If you aren't aware of the changes, by the way, to Sombra no longer gains ultimate charge to health packs. Instead, she's much more of a singular DPS, although she does still have weaknesses. She isn't quite as an efficient DPS in a one-on-one as a lot of other heroes. She loses a lot of these one-on-one duels on paper, so it's very difficult to sort of get results on your own as Sombra. You still need sort of a teammate to help you, but this is the crucial thing. Jake just gets behind here for free, and this is such a big deal. It means that Muma basically just has to land on top of Badosin, and Badosin dies instantly. And this is something that I've seen time and time again in these pro-level games, where the Tracer will get to that pier at the back, no one deals with it, no one spots it out, and it just sets up such an easy kill. It's so important to control that space. It's vital to do it correctly, because if you don't, that's going to happen, and Houston just end up with this very easy first point take, right? The Sombra is like a complete non-factor. Gesture's even getting staggered out as well because he didn't know what to do or where to go. He sort of jumped on someone, they survived, and he sort of just gets stuck out on his own. So now Leoric's crown rolls out, and they have to try and deliver that to the cathedral at the end, but realistically, actually, they only need to get to the end of Pylon World here. And you can see Muma already taking up aggressive positioning. Now, what surprised me here was Prophet staying on this Sombra, especially when the Junkrat comes out. Like, Junkrat and McCree, in my mind, are two very, very strong contenders for counters to Sombra, right? Because the Junkrat has a huge amount of burst damage. It's just very difficult to deal with. It's very hard to stealth as well when a Junkrat's on the map. And the other thing is McCree is just very good at shutting you down. So that's going to make it very difficult. And this is Houston playing to their strengths. Jake is the best Junkrat in the league, bar none. So why not use it? EMP goes in. No kills come out. Raucus is playing defensively, he's playing far back enough, just puts the coalescence through, and this ends up translating into kills. Meanwhile, Coolmat's just going nuts. Like, it feels like Houston's tank line can just kind of dive what they want, and they're just getting away with it, because London Spitfire's dive isn't quite as effective as it needs to be. The Sombra and Tracer just not doing enough to actually turn this into killing blows, right? This is, again, that weakness of the Sombra. Her DPS output is a little bit low. Now, luckily, London Spitfire also has a really good, goddamn good tank line, so Gesture and Fury can actually clean up, manage to get the rebound, manage to get a bunch of other kills, and continue the hold here. That's also the advantage these health packs present, is that if the supports can't keep you up, if you have control of health packs in specific areas, they can top you off nice and super quickly. Gesture's playing phenomenally at the moment. He's hunting people down. He's staying alive as well, and just continuing to constantly output his Winston, which is absolutely vital here. Birdring, spawning out Muma, having a bit of a cheeky peek. But it's going to be fine, he's going to bounce away, no problem. Raucus swapping up, actually, goes off the Moira. The issue with Moira here on second point is because it is so open, if you throw out an orb, it's just going to fly off into into orbit, basically. Not really going to help. You need those orbs bouncing around in area as long as possible. If Jake can get control up here, get a couple of good grenades, it's going to happen eventually, then it will work out for Houston Outlaws. So, in my mind, London Spitfire are kind of playing on a timer here. They're just sort of waiting for Houston. I'm going to use the term, waiting for Houston to get lucky, but we'll see. Now, let's talk about Jake's riptires in this game, because Normally he gets kills, like normally he gets a kill or two, but that's just greedy. That's just absolutely greedy. Bedosin did a phenomenal job hitting it, but I think, you know, Gesture could have absolutely got Bedosin there. Killing Bedosin there would be huge. He has Transcendence. Like, killing that guy is vital, but he got greedy. He went for Gesture as well, and they gave Bedosin enough time to land that right-click, the damage amp right-click, to take out the Riptire to set his team up. Houston, meanwhile, going to get something done with this. Cormac throws in a long bomb, just dunks it into the back line, and manages to get a triple kill, keeps his team alive in all of this, and this is also the power of those Mercies. When your team starts winning, Mercy lets you win harder by just bringing that res up. It's very difficult for a losing team to go and kill that Mercy while also staying functional in a team. Birdring swapping desperately to the Fire for a moment now brings out the McCree. Again, it just seems a little bit sort of confused about exactly what they're going to be doing here as Houston continue rolling forward towards this end point. And this is where the momentum's a really big factor. Again, like, we see this dive going on at Sonishuri as Primal Rage, but it's like, it's a Primal Rage in aid of nothing, in my mind. It's all sound and fury, but it's not actually doing anything. You know, he's just jumped in, and this is, again, frustration, lack of coordination, perhaps creeping in after that break. Now, it does mean that Fury does manage to get that kill on the front line, so that's going to keep London Spitfire involved in this fight. And Cormac, in a spot of trouble as well, will get bounced off, will get picked off. And like I said, like, you can see that Bedosin, for example, is playing very much from almost, you know, back towards the spawn. Birdring able to play pretty much defensively as well, back towards the spawn, so they can play around that. But Houston are set up in a very strong position at the moment. Another Riptire comes out, hunting down targets. Wants to get Gesture, wants to get actually the Mercy because he sees the beam, and again, just like greedy, just running it straight at the team, right? Normally we don't see that out of Jake. Normally he sort of launches it up very high and brings it down from on high, but he just tried to hunt down Gesture with it, then sort of got, you know, greedy for Nuss, and just ran it straight into the London Spitfire, which isn't going to work. Sloppy pulse bomb out of Lynx there again. Tracer play, not Houston's strong point at the moment. This does force out a lot of ultimates on Houston Outlaws' side as well, so they're going to go full aggression on this one. They've committed a lot of ultimates. Coolmat, again, his performance on this map has been impeccable so far, and now we see London Spitfire both support ultimates activating at the same time to just keep them alive in this fight, but that Sombra, in a direct fight, in a direct one-on-one fight, especially if you can't get those hacks off, doesn't contribute a huge amount of damage, especially compared to, say, Tracer and Junkrat, right? She's not going to deal that same amount of hurt. Boynt gets the res. This is a long, protracted fight. Normally, you would expect that to be going towards London Spitfire, but again, I think that damage output that this Sombra doesn't bring is actually having a very decisive effect here. Like, Prophet's shooting from not really mid-range, like short to mid-range, sort of between them both, not really putting damage massively onto anything, and Houston are just surviving long enough, keeping it going. EMP goes out, but it doesn't actually catch Raucus on the backline, so he's not going to get picked off anytime soon. The EMP doesn't really do anything here, and so, again, that Sombra weakness not quite paying dividends. I think Sombra is very situational, and I think Houston's playstyle kind of means that they're actually very strong against that Sombra. Prophet finally swaps off onto that Tracer. You see Birdring bringing up the Soldier as well. Again, he can just sort of contribute better from that spawn distance. Jake brings up the Riptire. This one actually lands, kills Gesture. That's a huge kill, removes a big target off the point, and now Jake can just clean up with his damage output, and Houston roll it in. Houston Outlaws continue to be the kryptonite for London Spitfire. Like, London Spitfire, you know, if you're going to give them warnings about two things, it's control maps and it's the Houston Outlaws. And Houston Outlaws continue to look okay, I would say. Like, they still have massive weaknesses. Their Tracer play leaves a lot to be desired. They seem to be gunning for Tracer Sombra as well, so we'll keep an eye on that, because Jake seems to be picking up that Sombra a little bit. Lynx is picking up the Tracer a bit more, and we'll see how that develops over the stage. Otherwise, let me know what you guys think of Blizzard World so far. Have you been enjoying watching it? Have you been enjoying playing it as well? Because I know a lot of people find it frustrating to play in ladder, and people don't quite know how it works. So I'm hoping, like, this is one of the things I like about a robust pro scene, is it kind of tells you how to play the game. It sort of like lays out an instruction manual of, this is how the best players in the world do it. This is probably how you should be doing it too. Thanks for watching to the end, guys. I've been Josh, as one voice amongst many. I'm a little bit sick, but hopefully you didn't notice too much. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Toodles.